Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Dojo Live. I am Tulio Suragusa, broadcasting from Southern California. Today, I'm joined by my co-hosts Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico, and Carlos Ponce in Cuernavaca, Mexico. And our guest today is Patrick Burns, who is the co-founder at Commons. Hi, Patrick. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Patrick, you're just a little north of me there in Los Angeles. We're looking forward to speaking with you about something really important that I think a lot of people have struggled with, especially this past year due to the pandemic, with everybody working remotely. The idea of the water cooler and chit chatting and meeting up with someone is it just doesn't exist, right? But there's got to be a way to do it, and I think that's what we're going to learn today. So we're looking forward to that. But before we introduce the show, let's get to know you a little bit. If you could be so kind, Patrick, to introduce yourself to the audience, that'd be great. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Tulio, and thank you all for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Something that I enjoy talking about very, very much, as you will probably see. So I'm Patrick. I'm co-founder of Commons, and my background is as a product leader, mostly at consumer tech companies. So I've spent some time at Google, Snap, and Amazon, as well as a few startups, including my own. I actually started my career at an enterprise SaaS company about 10 years ago. And actually, previous to getting into tech, I actually worked in media, and I ended up producing a documentary film. And so I've definitely seen quite a lot of different products and industries. And Commons is so near and dear to my heart and to ours as co-founders, my two co-founders, which I'll introduce as well, because it really kind of summarizes a lot of not just a current challenge with working from home, but also kind of a human challenge with how can we communicate in a way that's most natural.
Absolutely. That's a very big challenge today, especially with all the technology that's accessible. It's easy to just go and text and DM someone, and we've almost lost the art of communicating in person. So, tell us a little bit about Commons. What's the company all about? What is your mission? How did this come about?
Sure. So Commons is a company. Our mission is to make work feel more connected. And we believe that when people feel connected to work, to their colleagues, to their company's mission, to their managers, etc., that's when the best work happens. And so that's our overall mission. And this was really inspired by, as you can probably imagine, the sort of sudden shift that all of us, or many of us, experienced about a year ago when the pandemic hit and everyone started to work from home. And myself and my two co-founders, Aziz and Nazan, we were looking at this problem almost exactly a year ago, and we thought, this is really interesting. This is a paradigm shift. In a lot of ways, the way that we used to work is in the past. People are going to be demanding more flexibility in where they work, whether it's at home a few days a week or in the office. It's 5 days a week in the office is probably going to be very, very rare. And so as we dug into this, we started to realize that this actually resonated with us a lot as people. So Aziz and I worked together at Snap. He's an engineering leader with about 15 years of experience, and he was engineering lead of stories at Snap. I was product lead. And we actually met because we had a conversation, a non-work conversation, a water cooler chat, you could say, when we were both employees there, and we connected. We're very different people. He's from Turkey, I'm from Texas, very different lifestyles, but we actually had something in common, and that was this Turkish band that we both really loved. And that started that relationship. That was the kernel, and that ended up becoming a co-founder relationship. And his wife, Nazan, is our third co-founder. She has about 15 years of experience, spent about 10 years at Microsoft. So we came together and we said, wait a second, everyone's working from home, and that's going to be some sort of paradigm shift. But we're still in the cubicle era. We don't have the tools to communicate in the work from home context how you communicate in the real world. We don't. There's no way to have a tap on the shoulder interaction. It's like, hey, are you available? Wait. And so we started to break down, like wait a second, this is the problem here. How can we recreate? So our mission, as I mentioned, is to make work feel more connected, but our solution is really all about helping create a place for teams to talk like you're in the same room. And I can go on to more, but that's kind of at a high level what we're doing.
I love it. All right, so let's learn all that we can today. What is the topic? Let's get right into it. Carlos, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Patrick, for being with us today. Well, Tulio and Kim, today we're going to be speaking about recreating the water cooler talk for the remote office. In other words, we're going to be looking at exploring why it's more important than ever to stay connected to your team via a real-time conversation. Okay, so the first question that I have for our guest, Patrick, is this. Why did you choose this particular topic, and why did you think it was relevant for this day and age? Please, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Thank you.
Of course. Well, the topic is sort of foundational to Commons, the company, and a lot of the learnings that we gleaned starting about a year ago when we started looking to this problem. What we realized with this work from home and the remote work friction that was created, we realized that people described the way of working as transactional. People have Zoom fatigue because they're on Zooms or video conferences back to back all day long. That's not collaboration. That's basically taking a tool and bending it because there's no other tool available. And so the more that we dug into this problem, we actually, Aziz and I, we both worked at Snapchat for a while, and we're like, wait a second. When we were at Snapchat's ultimately a communication product. It's a tool that people use to communicate with your friends. And as a mission, the company wants to be the fastest way to talk to your friends. And so that's really instilled in our brains. And how do you create products that are super fast and help recreate like what it's like to talk or communicate in the real world? And so if I could, zooming out here, if I combine, the problem that we encountered with the market and then our experiences previous to looking at this, we're like, wait a second, there's some synergy here. Let's sort of combine these things and build a product that can recreate some of that culture and communication gap, or help can fill that culture communication gap that exists in today's remote work setup.
So, Patrick, I'm curious about if the dynamics have also changed in the past year, right? Some of us have been remote for way before this pandemic started and got used to this idea of not having someone tap on your shoulder and say, hey, what's going on? Can we talk for a few minutes? Now, a lot of people probably have adjusted to that model where things are planned, things are done in advance. How do we sort of get back to this idea of collaborating and having that water cooler type of conversation? Is this something that the majority of people are complaining about, that they miss, or is there something that's more of a hybrid movement coming out of this that's happening? Based on your research or developing this, what have you discovered?
Yeah, good question. And I guess there's three things I was hoping to hit on, that address this question, because it's a really good one. One is, we say water cooler conversation, water cooler talk, serendipitous run-in, ad hoc chat, quick sync. All of these are actually very distinct scenarios, and they require different types of to get there. They have people who are involved in these scenarios have different goals in mind. And so I think it's really important that when we say water cooler talk, it's actually an umbrella term. What we find is actually, there's several sub use cases, each one of which is valuable and independent of the others. And so that's one thing. And I think that even within sort of the umbrella term of water cooler talk, we're actually focused on a subset of those, and I can go into more detail on that. But I want to also address the first thing you said around. You're right. There are some teams that obviously were remotely before the shift to work from home with the pandemic, and a lot of them, some of them are doing very well, and they never had any of these issues. I would say that some of those teams, they actually have found ways to replicate this communication and culture style because they've been very diligent about it. So they're kind of like pros, is what you might say.
Hmm.
But we fundamentally believe that if you rewind several years, when I don't know if many people in the audience use Slack, but when Slack first addressed the market, people used email, and their goal was to kill email. And that was very challenging at first because people use email for everything, and they didn't think there's any better way to do things than email. And all of a sudden Slack comes along, and it's like, wait a second, this is way better than email. And so in a similar way, we're hoping to build a product that becomes so obvious that it's a better way of interacting with your team. You can get things done faster. You can resolve questions and problems before they arise. And then most importantly, you feel more connected to your teammates.
So in that line, first of all, thank you for being here, Patrick. And I apologize. I was having internet issues. So how does Commons work? What does that interaction look like?
Yeah, good question. I would first ask all of you to, if you're curious, sign up for our beta, of course, and you can get your own preview. But I'll tell you how it works conceptually, and then I'll tell you how it works at a product, like more specific product level. Conceptually, Commons is kind of like being in the same room as your teammates, but only with audio. We do have video enabled as well if you want it, but imagine if you could, recreate your office. This is like my team, the marketing team, that's the engineering team, that's the product team. And you could basically just jump into different rooms and talk to anybody in there without having to, set up a meeting. So you might call it an always on audio experience that works like a walkie-talkie. So the walkie-talkie, the military sort of communication product, you press a button to talk, and then when you want to talk, you talk, and then you stop talking. And for us, that's really important because when we broke down, like if we wanted to recreate what it's like to talk in the same room with your teammates, we really had to reduce the friction. Right now, if I wanted to get to a conversation with a teammate on Slack, it's probably like a 6-step process. Are you available? Okay, when? Okay, how are we going to talk? Okay, here's my phone number. And so all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, I don't actually need to talk right now. I can talk tomorrow. And so when you reduce friction, you make it much easier. And so that's what we've done with Commons.
Interesting.
I love it. This makes sense to me now, the walkie-talkie component, because immediately throughout this whole year, we've been working from home and also distance learning with kids. And I'm like, my word, I don't really think my teammates would enjoy listening to Paw Patrol, or I said get down all day long. So it's like I'm heard when I want to be heard, and then they can respond accordingly. I love that. It works out very nicely.
I don't know if any of you have Clubhouse, which is a very popular live audio app. And then there's, Discord is very popular among mostly like the gaming community. So there are existing pairings that if we think about the macro environment, live audio as a format seems to be having a somewhat of a moment in terms of consumer adoption. So that's obviously something that we're trying to lean into as well.
Yeah, I love the fact that you guys have the live audio. I can't stand that I can't attach a voice message to Slack. I'm sorry, Slack. Love you guys, but sometimes you're just done typing for the day. You just want to quickly do a message. Carlos, I know you had a question coming up.
There's WhatsApp for that.
Yes, but It's not commonly used.
I'm sorry, guys. I was doing my mute thing. I
I saw.
apologize.
I noticed. I noticed.
Yeah, it's well before. Yeah, we have a question from the audience, and I'll read it back to you, Patrick. But
Yeah.
going back to what Tulio was saying about this inability of Slack and leaving voicemail messages, at least that's where kind of LinkedIn sort of stacks up these types of. Although LinkedIn is a different tool and a different platform for a different purpose, but it's always good to just go and, hey, I want to say something this to you or whatever, So it's convenient. Yeah, Patrick, the question that I have from the audience is this one. Let me just put on my glasses here. Okay, the question is this: how does Commons stack up against other video communication tools like Zoom and Google Meet?
Yeah, great question. So our fundamental belief, again, going back to the foundation of the company, we don't believe there is a tool prior to Commons that lets you talk like you're in the same room as your team. And so the way that we Zoom, especially Meet and probably somewhere for Teams video conferences, the real world analogy of a Zoom meeting is every office has like a really nice conference room, long wooden table, like big TVs and like glass walls, and it's always really cold in there, and there's super duper speakers. That's the digital equivalent of a Zoom. It's a super duper high end, flawless, beautiful, very top video conference experience. Now, in those offices, the idea of spending your entire day with your team in that super duper formal conference room is very strange, but that people are using Zoom today. And so the way that we think about it is, for your internal team communication, especially when I say team, I mean, less than 50 people usually for most teams. Zoom is not really the ideal tool. Zoom is especially for the quick syncs, the really quick, like less than 10-minute conversations. And so we think Zoom is a great tool for these, any external meeting you have, any like presentation, any company-wide big formal thing. It is not a good tool for everyday team-based communications. And you can see this, like Tulio, like you said, many people feel Zoom fatigue because there's a lot of science in this. I don't want to bore you, but like when you stare at a video of yourself all day long and on a grid, it's actually not good for your brain. And so there's actually a scientific reason for why Zoom fatigue is a thing. But anyway, that's in general how we think about the difference. And
yeah, I'm not surprised. People are like, well, you turning on a camera? It's like, no, I'm just going to walk around and talk. I'm done with the camera today. Go ahead, Kim.
No, I like it. I like the idea of what happens when
I hear you.
The spur of the moment thought. I'm like, oh, guys, what would happen if this or this or that? And where you just sort of stand up and or walk around the corner and be like, hey. And even the casual chit chat of, back when it was still good and still a thing. Like, what'd you think of the Game of Thrones episode last night?
Exactly. Because just not to interrupt you, but just on that point, it's very interesting. What we have found in the course of doing a lot of research is that, we used to think, oh, people miss the casual sort of, would you watch last night? Or how was the weekend? They miss the casual chit chat, because all they have is the professional, formal Zoom style communication. So at first we're like, well, let's try to recreate the casual chit chat. But what we found is, and this is probably, I'm sure all of you can attest to this, but what we found is in the office, these things are interchangeable. You start the conversation with, how was your weekend? And then 2 minutes later, like, oh, by the way, did you see that email? Oh, did you, it's fluid. It's fluid. And so the idea that you have these things compartmentalized is unnatural So sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, and the
interrupt
audio
there.
component, because I mean, I think you can have some of that conversation written in with tools like Slack or something, but there's the trick because maybe you're not able to pick up, was that a joke? Are they being sarcastic? Are they angry? Are they in a rush? Whatever types of things that you are able to hopefully pick up on with the audio. And I was also going to ask, interesting fact here at the Encora Mexico offices, in our building here in Hermosillo where I am, obviously we're not there right now, but when we were, it's actually 3 floors and there's literally just one water cooler. And this was intentional because what it allows for us to do is bump into and interact with people that you might not otherwise be interacting with, right? Who, I'm on the sales team and you're a developer. I work, with people development and you're in sales. So maybe professionally our paths aren't crossing that often, but we can, see a face, get to know each other and make a connection with people outside of our immediate teams. So you mentioned Commons, being geared more toward teams, but is there also an ability for a company to have like a common area? Like, how does that work?
Exactly. You're basically describing our longer term roadmap, in some ways, for exactly the reasons that you described. When I was at Google has the same idea. The way the building is designed is to maximize interaction between people who don't typically interact. So hallways are a certain width, and micro kitchens are in certain areas of the room for exactly that kind of reason. And that's back to my previous point about water cooler is an umbrella term, and there's actually like several sub scenarios within it. That was what we call like the casual run-in with another team member who might not be on your immediate team. That is very interesting. It's very helpful, especially for new employees. It helps you understand and get knowledge that you wouldn't get otherwise. We will get there. That's a somewhat different problem than we're currently solving. But you're right. When your whole entire company is on Commons, it makes it very simple to do these quick, oh, you're available for 5 minutes. It basically is recreating the way that Aziz and I, my co-founder, met, which is that we walked back from lunch and we happened to be like walking together. So these are extremely critical conversations.
Mm-hmm. Or even talking about lunch, I was going to bring that up. The ability, like, I'm sitting here at home, I'm having lunch. Let's see who's in the lunchroom and let's strike up a conversation.
Exactly. And then this just goes back to the inability to do these things quickly is what leads a lot of people to feel like they're kind of trapped in the Zoom grid all day. And then they're trapped in the Slack, river of communication all day. And they just miss this like natural free flowing way of conversing with their teammates.
I have some usability design question, but after Carlos.
Yes, please. I'll take advantage of this moment in which I am not on mute, for the record. Patrick, I have this is regarding let's say okay, let me put it this way. I like the comparison you did with this on one side of this fancy meeting place or meeting room with a big screen and all the all the bells and whistles, and then on the other side of the spectrum, you have the very casual, laid back water cooler, or even the kitchen, so where people just gather, just chit chat. So in that sense, how would you say that could be, or can you mention some of these more casual aspect elements of Commons that would be the equivalent to, let's say, the water itself, or coffee, or a beer, as in Cora, everyone likes beer. Some of us like wine, like me. So what do you say would be the equivalent, the digital equivalent to these elements that are so related to the human element, to the person, to the people? Okay, how would you? I just like to get a glimpse of that, please, if possible.
Yeah, I love this. This is so interesting. it's a foundational piece of how we think about our product from a design point of view. We want it to feel exactly like you're describing, casual. And because if you think about it, we believe that teams that communicate well perform well. And we also believe that small talk is big talk. Culture development, just like friendship development, it requires lots of spontaneous interactions over a long period of time. And a lot of these are, it's best when they're casual, off the cuff. So when we think about how do we design an experience in a digital way that can feel liberating, and there's a couple of things that I won't go into too much detail, but a couple of things that we've done. First and foremost is a focus on talking. Normalizing talking in the workplace. What that means is video is optional. What that means is a 2-minute conversation is perfectly normal, because that's how you communicate in the real world. 2-minute conversations. Hey, Tulio. Hey, Carlos. Hey, Kim. So that's one thing, like normalizing, and I can go into multiple layers as to like how that happens, but in general, focusing on speed and focusing on audio. The second thing is layering in a bunch of stuff on the product design when it comes to how it feels. How does it feel to use? How does it feel to use a lot of enterprise software, a lot of communication software? It doesn't feel great. There's like not to just Zoom, but how does it feel to try to invite someone to a Zoom meeting? It takes like 5 clicks, and there's all these windows jumping up, and it's just like it's really overwhelming.
It takes like 3 clicks just to leave.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
How can we make this feel? Basically, we want to get the technology out of the way and really just focus on a simple human natural experience to elevate the actual thing we want, which is talking.
Yeah, it's too formal, and that's the whole point I wanted to ask about whether the Commons has this feature today or it's something you're planning in the future. As I'm listening here, I'm realizing that what a lot of these platforms lack is the ability to create opportunity for spontaneity, right? And I say opportunity for spontaneity because you don't see the other person where they are. You can't tell if they're on the phone or if they're busy doing something when you're virtual, right? You just don't see that, which you do physically in an office. But what if these platforms had a way for people to share their common interest, and through some AI algorithms actually finds an opportunity when the person's idle and connects them and says, hey, you guys should chat, like the way you would bump into someone literally at the water cooler. Is there thoughts around that? Is that something you guys have explored? Is there an opportunity to go in that direction where you actually can facilitate the bumping into each other and having those conversations?
I love it. I'll ask you and Kim if you ever do want to think about joining us. You have very good ideas. So
we give tips to guests all the time. We had a company that came on board and they decided to change their product 30 days later. But that's another conversation. No, I'm just curious if that's something you guys have thought of.
Yeah, no, it's something to think about all the time. When it comes to breaking down that scenario, there's a couple of things that you need. You need a way to have a passive awareness of, in this case, maybe someone else's interests in something. That's one. And the second thing is you need some sort of interaction to take place, ideally in a casual ad hoc manner. We definitely will get there. We're not quite there yet. We're still in a very limited private beta. But a lot of these things you're describing are things that we have on our roadmap and are looking at. For right now, we have several customers right now, and we're just focused on the core experience. Kim, and the feedback we're getting is Commons is helping my team move faster and collaborate more efficiently. But more importantly, Commons is helping my team feel like a team, something that we've been missing substantially.
All right. Well, we could talk for a long time. This is very interesting, but unfortunately, our time has come to an end. But we do have one final question, and that is more along the lines of what this journey's been like for you and your co-founders in creating something that hasn't been done before. It's a big challenge, big opportunity. With it also comes a lot of naysayers that you meet along the way. So what's that journey been like for you guys?
I don't want to speak for Aziz and Nazan, but I think they would agree that it's been a blast. I would do this again in a heartbeat. It's such an interesting problem that has so many different dimensions, and it doesn't feel like work. So we're having a blast.
Awesome. Well, it's been great to have you as our guest today. We all have to stay in touch and see how you progress and come along. Who knows? Maybe you can make us part of your user base input team. Well, this is the first show for this week. Stay with us, Patrick, as we go off the air for a few minutes. But this is the first show of the week. We have 3 more this week. Carlos, what do we got coming up?
We got a full week, Tulio. Yes. Okay. So tomorrow, as you know, it's Wednesday, and we have 2 shows. The first one at 10 a.m. Pacific, and the first one is going to be on the topic of headwinds facing the banking industry with Steve Andrews, the president and CEO of Western Bankers Association. And then at 12 noon Pacific, we're going to be speaking with Sam Brenner, the COO of Boxcast, and the topic is going to be the heart of live streaming, making people part of the experience. And finally, on Thursday, we're going to be speaking with Adam Jackson, the CEO of Brain Trust. So we have a full week ahead. There's lots to recap on the following Monday. So stay tuned for all of these shows, and also, of course, for the recap show on Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific. And I'll see you all there right here on Dojo Live. And of course, thanks, Patrick, for having joined us today, and my fellow teammates as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.